I'm Lucy Hawkins and welcome to this BBC News special. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking at the situation in Venezuela after two strong earthquakes hit the country. At least 164 people are now known to have died. Almost 1,000 people have been injured. Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, has declared a state of emergency. It was a 7.2 magnitude quake that struck near San Felipe, around 125 miles west of Caracas at around 6 p.m. local time. But it was then followed just minutes later by another quake of 7.5 magnitude, and that was in the state of La Guaira. We have these live pictures coming into us from across the country. A number of buildings have collapsed, we know, in Caracas. That's what you're seeing now. Emergency services and volunteers trying to reach those trapped inside these collapsed buildings. There are fears that the death toll could rise significantly. The building you're seeing now, I think, was about 15 stories high, and it has totally come down, as you can see there. In a social media post, we've heard from President Trump. He is promising help, adding that he had instructed US federal agencies to be ready to move quickly. This is the moment that the earthquake hit the international airport, which serves Caracas. It is now closed due to that extensive damage that you can see. That is a real problem as well, potentially, for all the aid that needs to come in with this major airport that's shut. And you can hear the fear and the panic there as the quake strikes Caracas and this shopping centre as well. All these people quickly trying to find somewhere safe in that shopping centre. Well, let's bring you the very latest with Caroline Hawley.
This is the terrifying moment the disaster struck. Panicked passengers at the Simon Bolivar International Airport outside the capital, where part of the ceiling falls in. The two tremors came in quick succession, less than a minute apart. The second one, the strongest to hit Venezuela in over a century. It's a devastating blow to a country reeling from an economic crisis and political turmoil. In several states of northern Venezuela, buildings collapsed. This was filmed on the outskirts of the capital, Caracas. He wants to know what's happened to his mother. Yesterday was a national holiday. Many people were at home when just after 6 p.m. in the evening, everything began to shake. A man films as he flees his high-rise building, encountering more and more destruction as he goes. Responding to this will be a major challenge for the interim president, who's been running the country since her predecessor, Nicolás Maduro, was abducted by the US.
I must inform you that the hardest hit state by this unprecedented seismic event is the state of La Guaira. There are tens of collapsed buildings and we're working hard to save as many lives as God allows us.
It is a desperate search for survivors, and they've been working through the night. In these kind of rescue operations, every hour counts. Offers of help are pouring in from around the region and beyond, but this is a country where many were already reliant on aid. We don't yet know the scale of this unfolding humanitarian crisis, but it's clear the needs are urgent.
Well, it's been quite shocking. We haven't seen anyone come to help the team. Up until this very moment, there hasn't been any heavy equipment or officials to assist us. It's been a pretty intense experience.
This map shows the epicenter and intensity of the first earthquake, which was immediately followed by the second, stronger one. In the capital, Caracas, a woman shows the damage done to her home. "Thank God my daughters are safe," she says. But across the disaster zone, many are still trapped under rubble, and everyone knows the death toll will rise. One international aid agency said its staff were witnessing devastation beyond belief. Caroline Hawley, BBC News.
A pretty devastating picture emerging from parts of the country. Lots of people posting on social media as well with pictures of their loved ones that are missing, and lots of people trying to help themselves with these buildings that have collapsed, digging through the rubble. But let's take you live to Caracas. We can speak to Gustavo Ocando Alex, who is a journalist who is there. Gustavo, good to have you with us at an incredibly worrying time for the country. Can you first just tell us what it was like to be in the earthquake? What happened?
Hi, Lucy. Thank you for having me. Yesterday was one of the most frightening days ever for Venezuelans, and it was also one of the longest nights in history for the Latin American country. This is reflected not only in the irreparable loss of thousands of lives and the ceaseless search and rescue operations had collapsed buildings, but also in the fear and anxiety that we all Venezuelans are experiencing caused by further tremors that struck cities like Caracas during today's early morning hours. And many friends or relatives living in Caracas and especially in towns like Catia La Mara, La Guaira State, are still unheard of. And people that are affected by these two earthquakes report being unable to sleep due to at least three aftershocks. And many have had to sleep outside, either because their homes had partially or totally collapsed, or simply as a precaution, and remaining out in the open and exposed to the elements while waiting for help, waiting for the ground movement to cease.
Gustavo, you mentioned thousands of people there. Delcy Rodriguez at the moment saying 164 people have been killed and 1,000 injured. But is there this expectation that the death toll could go up really dramatically in the coming hours?
Yeah, it's important to remember that the last major earthquake in Venezuela occurred almost 60 years ago. That happened in 1967, when more than 200 people died and around 2,000 were injured, and we're just barely in those figures. These numbers could be tragically surpassed after yesterday's events, especially given the many people missing from the statements and made by the authorities. And like US President Donald Trump, who said last night that the number of deaths in Venezuela is, in his own words, devastating. And Venezuelan people and authorities are expecting foreign help to arrive, but we have this sad notion that these operations could lead to even a more shocking number.
Gustavo, Venezuelans have been through so much already, and the economy is so fragile at the moment. There are so many issues. How could that limit the response now?
We Venezuelans sense that the interim presidency of Delcy Rodriguez, who took over the power in Venezuela since last January 3 events, and that could lead to an open mind. We have to remember that Delcy Rodriguez last night accepted the help, for example, from El Salvador's president, and that wasn't, they ideologically they weren't aligned, but right now they're helping each other, and Delcy accepted the help. And Rodriguez also decreed the state of emergency. This measure will enable the executive to adopt urgent regulations to safeguard the national economy and guarantee access to essential goods and services, but also that could lead to guarantee the foreign help.
Gustavo, take care. Thank you so much for joining us. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
We're
Lucy.
thinking of you all.
Thank you.
There has been some really, really remarkable and tragic videos and pictures that are being shared right across social media, and BBC Verify has been looking at them so far and some of the damage that we are seeing in these videos. And Thomas Copeland from BBC Verify is with me now. What have you been watching and seeing?
We've been trying to source, verify and crucially map dozens of these videos emerging on social media. The idea being to try to show a sense of the scale across the country of where we're seeing the impact of this immediate earthquake and its aftermath as well. Now, lots of the videos we've seen so far have come from Caracas and those surrounding urban areas. That's about 100 miles away from the actual epicenter of this earthquake. We've seen the videos, you've been showing them from inside Venezuela's main airport, showing travellers running, screaming, shaking off their feet. Some of them you can see there, the airport collapsing, the roof of the airport sort of collapsing in around them. That airport closed now due to serious damage. On the streets of Caracas and nearby urban areas, buildings that are clearly shaken, some of them sort of leaning precariously, just about still standing. standing, and other ones completely collapsed inwards. And just along a northern coast road, we've just been looking at footage of Hotel Edwards in La Guaira. It formerly was a fine, very nice hotel looking out on the Caribbean, reduced to rubble behind the hotel entrance. That's a sense of the kind of videos that we've been seeing, and we're going to see more and more of them as the day rolls on.
OK, Thomas, we'll leave you to keep across that. Thank you so much. Let's bring in Dr. Richard Luckett, who is a seismologist at the British Geological Survey, who has been monitoring these earthquakes. Dr. Luckett, good to have you with us. Just explain exactly what had happened, because it seems there were these two quakes right next to each other, and the big issue seems to be the depth at which they struck.
Yes, I mean, they were recorded as two separate earthquakes on seismometers because there were two distinct signals. But it's important to remember that these earthquakes involve faults, over 100 kilometers long. So the two epicenters being 5 kilometers apart, I mean, they really are part of the same movement of the Earth. It's just very complicated. Different parts of the fault are moving at different times. But what we've got is a large section of the Earth, 100, 150 kilometers long, 10 kilometers deep, moving in a complicated way.
Yeah, Dr. Luckett, the people we've been speaking to in Caracas, particularly today, said it didn't feel like two earthquakes. It just felt like one terrifying, long earthquake that they went through. Why is it so significant that it was so shallow?
The more shallow an earthquake is, then the more damage it's likely to do because, well, the energy release is closer to the buildings and the people.
And has there been a number of aftershocks as well?
There have been a lot of aftershocks, as expected. I'm not aware of any over magnitude 4, although a 4 is still big enough to shake already damaged buildings and certainly interrupt rescue operations. There will be more aftershocks in the next few days, going on for weeks. There could still be aftershocks.
And have we seen earthquakes in other countries as well in terms of these plates and this movement?
Not recently. I mean, this plate goes along the whole of the north coast of South America, separating it from the Caribbean. There haven't been any big earthquakes on this plate boundary recently.
What about what's happened in Japan in the last 24 hours?
That's completely separate. I mean, the number of earthquakes as big as the one in Japan in a day in the world, I mean, it's not unusual to have two in a day, and they are completely separate. They're on completely different plates, a long way apart.
We are looking at pictures from Japan at the moment, and I think that's a very important point to note because a lot of people are commenting on the amount of quakes there were in one day. So Japan has them all the time.
It does. I mean, it's had a lot of magnitude 6 and 7s this year already, or a few. It's important to remember that earthquakes are random, and because of that, they often group. So you'll get, weeks and weeks without anything particularly large, and then you'll get several together. And that's just a feature of the randomness of them.
OK, Dr. Luckett, good to have you with us. While intensive rescue efforts are underway, severe economic hardship in recent years means resources available to mount such operations are limited. And to that end, the US, China and India are among those pledging support. CBS News correspondent Jared Hill, tell me more about the US reaction to the earthquake.
At this point, this is still very early in the response to this tragedy, but what we are hearing from the Secretary of State is that the United States will be sending emergency assistance to Venezuela, and that would come in the form of search and rescue teams, as well as medical resources and humanitarian assistance. We've seen the United States do this with other countries in the region after other major disasters. One of the big ones that a lot of folks think about often is the massive earthquake that happened in Haiti. And so again, we're seeing the United States saying that they will be sending some additional assistance and aid to Venezuela in light of this really deadly, devastating natural disaster.
And how is the relationship right now, Jared, between President Trump and Delcy Rodriguez?
Yeah, that's interesting because, again, all of this is happening after a pretty seismic shift in the political scene in Venezuela as well at the hands of the United States. President Trump, in a post that he put about this overnight, said that, quote, "We will be there for our new and great friends." showcasing there the acknowledgement that the relationship between the United States and Venezuela, in particular with Delcy Rodriguez at the helm now, is in a different place than maybe it would have been before. Whether that means that there will be any different type of assistance or aid, that's yet to be seen. But that is definitely something that President Trump is commenting on specifically this morning.
With me here in the studio is Daniel Gonzalez Capa, who is from Caracas. And Danny, really difficult to be a journalist when this is happening to your country and your city as well. But what are you hearing from friends and family?
Well, my family is okay. I'm hearing more from my friends. My friend Armando Nori is in one of the hardest hit places in Caracas, Los Palos Grandes, Altamira, which historically is one of the places with seismic activity. He saw buildings collapsing, a lot of people in the streets with fear about what was going on. He's now moving to another part of Caracas for safety because he doesn't feel safe in the other part of Caracas where he was.
And what about La Guaira? Because it seems that that's a state that's been very badly hit.
Yes, La Guaira is one of the states that has been hit, like hardest hit in Venezuela, and sadly something happened before in 1999. It's not the first time this state was hit by a natural event. In 1999, a series of landslides basically destroyed a huge part of this state, which is really hard for the population who live there because it's one of the smallest states, but economically it's really important because it's the way to go to Caracas. The main airport is in La Guaira, and one of the two main ports is in this state.
So we've seen pictures of the airport.
Yes.
I mean, it is devastated and closed.
Yes.
That's surely going to affect delivery of aid, people
Yes.
trying to get in to help.
And La Guaira is a reflection of how vulnerable Venezuela is to this kind of events because these landslides happened in 1999, but the state never recovered fully from this event, which is like, of course, it's even harder for people now. Even with the crisis, the economic situation, the political expectations, it's really hard for people living in this area.
And Danny, how are communications at the moment? Are people able to, get in contact with other people? Is the internet up and running? Because I think we're still trying to figure out what the full picture is and what's happening.
Yeah, when the earthquakes happened, apparently there was issues with the internet. For example, my parents couldn't communicate with me immediately. It seems like, at least I have been speaking with a couple of people, including my parents. It seems like the internet is recovering. I don't know the rest of the country, but at least in Caracas, I have been speaking with people, and it seems to be fine.
Okay, well, we will leave it there for the moment. I know you've got more calls to make and you'll be back with us throughout the day as we show you these live pictures as well. Let's just return to them because we are hearing very sadly of many people who are trapped, particularly in some apartment buildings that have collapsed, and there is now a real desperate search for survivors in some of these places. Some rescuers saying they can hear voices inside, so that is obviously heartening, but also very worrying too.